The King Herod of Jesus' day was brilliant and brutal. As Kenneth Bailey says in his book, Jesus Through Middle Eastern Eyes, being racially Arab, religiously Jewish, culturally Greek, and politically Roman, Herod was a complex man. He did not hesitate to take the life of his own family as he jealously guarded his own throne. And so the Bible tells us in Matthew chapter 2, that Herod, when he saw that he was deceived by the wise men, was exceedingly angry. And he sent forth and put to death all the male children who were in Bethlehem and in all its districts from 2 years old and under. Jesus had to flee. The angel appeared to Joseph in a dream, verse 13 tells us, and said, "Arise, take the young child and his mother, flee to Egypt, and stay there until I bring you word, for Herod will seek the young child to destroy him." Jesus became a refugee. Jesus has a deep passion and a heart, as the Bible expresses throughout the scriptures, for the stranger in our midst. He is the one who calls us in Leviticus 19:33 and 34 to love the stranger as if it were one born among you, to love them as you love yourself. Jesus understood because he chose to enter into the very life of a refugee. Consider with me what it was like for the family, Mary, Joseph, and Jesus, as they fled to Egypt. They experienced what refugees experience today, the dreadful fear that it is not safe to remain where it was once comfortable and normal and where you were loved. They also experienced what it was like to no longer be able to live in home, in comfort, in the place where they were surrounded by people who cared about them and loved them. They also were now despised, looked down on as strangers and foreigners in the land of Egypt. There were language barriers, differences, which led to economic challenges for the family. And not only that, they too faced what refugees face, looking at a very uncertain future, so that the Bible goes on to tell us that when Herod was dead, an angel of the Lord appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt, told him to take him back, but even then he was afraid. His father Joseph, earthly father Joseph, was afraid, and so he went to another place rather than back to their homeland. Jesus has come, chosen to take flesh and blood like ours and experience what we have experienced, going through the difficulties as a child, as a young boy, and then later as a man, experiencing so much more in his beating, in his false accusations, in being attacked by his own people, betrayed, and finally killed on the cross. Our ugly world has multiplied its King Herods. As we have seen just in recent history, 6.8 million refugees fleeing from Syria, another 4 million from Venezuela, 2.6 from Afghanistan, 2.2 from South Sudan, 1.1 from Myanmar. At the time of the mid part of 2021, we could count 84 million displaced people in the world. Count 100 people and one of them no longer can live in their own home, go to their market, let his children or her children attend school. They are not able to be in their own bed at night. Many of those are refugees where it has become so dangerous they have to even flee into another country. Half of those are children under the age of 18. When will war cease to the end of the earth? This is God's cry and his desire, but he wants to work now through this tragedy to bring people close to us as kingdoms fall because they disobey God's laws and a nation is exalted by righteousness. God uses these things to allow people to move closer to where somebody will welcome them and bring them home. Jesus said, "I was a stranger and you took me in." He identifies with the refugee. Those numbers don't even include what we have seen as the crisis in Ukraine has unraveled. 13 million displaced people, 5 of them across the border, primarily into Poland, 8 of them still displaced there with an uncertain future. If we just lift up our eyes, we can see them all around. In the airport in Atlanta, Georgia, on our way home at Christmas, we look up and we see a row of people who surely must be from Afghanistan. Let's go talk to them, said my wife. And so we went over. The language wasn't there. We were struggling. We pulled out Google Translate. We called an Afghan friend of ours, and we began to find out that they had just come out of Afghanistan, had been in the military bases, were vetted, and were now free to move to Houston, Texas, where we live. We took their contact information, and later we were able to visit them. Not in a new home, not in an apartment, but at a hotel that was completely full of Afghan refugees. Waiting. We're sitting there, he translated to me. We have nothing to do. I am useless. He was longing for a job, longing to find a home they could settle in, a chance to begin school. They are there. And so, what could we do? What can we do? We went to the churches. We talked to them. We shared with them what has happened and what could be done just by being a friend, by finding out what they need through listening, and then doing your best to connect them to services that could help or to your own church that could minister to their needs. We began to pray more earnestly for the stranger, the refugee in our midst. And then we called the churches together across Houston. Come, let's talk, let's pray, let's pull our resources, our ability, our network, for they've lost their network. They've lost their people that they know that could have helped them through such trials. We can be that network for them. So we came together. We spent a Sabbath afternoon praying, talking, and made a list of different things that could be done. Those with medical skills on one list. Those who would be willing to truck furniture to fill in apartments that had nothing in it. Those who would distribute food and diapers and the different things they need. And yes, people who would go through training so that they would know how to be a friend who could help them through the emotional struggles and needs that they have. And finally, we began to pray that God would send us someone who could understand their culture and religion and share the gospel even in their own language. Even when our hearts are moved, we can be unsure what to do and how to take the next step. If you just do a search online for Refugee Resettlement Agency near you, you will find just what to do. If you go to reachtheworldnextdoor.com, it will give you instructions of how to find them and who to connect with, who in turn will train you to volunteer and to reach out to the people that are around you. You'll be able to see what others are doing, catch an idea, and then follow up with real relationships that can go far. Jesus left heaven to come to be a baby, knowing that he would become a refugee. Step by step, let's follow Jesus into the world next door.